According to reports cited by the UK's Ministry of Defense, the Ukrainian town of Krinky has become the site of one of the most one-sided battles in the entire war. Approximately 300 Ukrainian Marines reportedly are taking out up to 90% of the Russian armored vehicles assigned to take back the tiny town they are holding on to. Just what is their strategy, and why have Ukrainian commanders settled on the perfect spot to grind Russian forces to dust? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. All right. So Krinky, for those of you that don't remember, is the town where the largest fighting is happening. This is the Ukrainian Marine Corps, who has launched an amphibious operation crossing the Dnieper River, actually in a number of locations. But most notably, they have established a foothold in the town of Krinky. Now you can see Krinky here. The downtown is primarily Russian controlled, but most reports indicate that Ukrainian forces control east of the town here. Just a small foothold, but this foothold is in, well, just the right location to ensure that Russian forces really don't have a shot at taking it back. And here's kind of the data that I'm citing. This is from the UK's Ministry of Defense. They're reporting that the Ukrainian forces are relying heavily on first-person view UAVs fitted with munitions, sometimes called kamikaze drones, to target these Russian forces. And if you go on X, you'll see a tremendous number of videos of these drones absolutely shredding Russian tanks and BMPs and other armored vehicles in and around Krinky. Now, the reason that the UK cites for these tremendous losses, and they claim up to 90% of Russian military equipment in the Krinky sector has already been destroyed, and most numbers put the number of Marines in Krinky hovering around the 3 to 500 personnel. And the UK says it's because Russian forces can't get their hands on sophisticated electronic warfare weapons that can normally be used to somewhat mitigate the effectiveness of drones. But I think that's only part of the story, and it's not accounting for the sort of brilliant strategy Ukraine has settled on to hold this town and grind Russian forces. Okay, now before we take a look at the actual Russian mill blogger and his account of serving in Krinky, I wanted to quick talk about StrikeGum. StrikeGum, of course, is the zero sugar energy drink alternative. It is my gum, veteran owned, made here in the USA with 90 milligrams of caffeine in every piece. That's an entire Red Bull in just this little piece of gum, right? Plus 100 milligrams of alpha GPC, and best of all, 50% of the profits from this first production run are going to be donated to charities that support Ukrainian civilians who've been injured or displaced in the conflict. The first production run is actually just about sold out, so I'm actually kind of crossing my fingers that the second production run gets in time before we're out. So check us out at StrikeGum.com. Plus, we have military discounts. We have a ton of different discounts, so you can always find a way to get a steal on your StrikeGum. So, and anyway, of course, thanks to the thousands of people who've already ordered. And also one other thing, if you happen to know a distributor, buyer, or someone who handles that sort of things for like gas stations, we're trying to get in physical locations, grocery stores, convenience stores, gas stations, Walmart. Anybody who can help us out can definitely reach out to the email below, Dan@CombatVetNews. And if you have any professional contacts that can help us get StrikeGum into physical locations, it'd be awesome. Okay, that being said, let's talk about, this is a translation from Russian forces on the ground themselves in Krinky. They say, quote, "Everything would be good and normal, but there are some idiots on our side who don't learn from their mistakes and drive equipment to Krinky." He says, 90% of the equipment that goes into Krinky doesn't come back. And so the question arises, why are they, the grammar gets weird here. Basically, he asks, why are you even sending it there? He says the technology, the armored vehicles, have no place in Krinky. It's also surprising that they launched these attacks during the day, right? And he's reporting that, of course, in a typical assault, right, it'll fail. They'll lose 2 tanks and 3 armored vehicles, which is basically an entire Russian assault group. And he says, quote, You cannot storm when the enemy has superiority in artillery and drones. And this, I think, is the core of the strategy here in Krinky that's so brilliant. So first off, here's the satellite view of the town. Now, I point out that there are, on the other side of the Dnipro, Ukrainian forces can operate wherever they want because Russian forces are not in a position to conduct any crossing, right? They haven't been. The Ukrainian forces have really good observation on the whole river. So that means that you don't have to worry when you position artillery or drone operators that they're going to find Russian forces on their flanks. There's no flank for the Russian forces to occupy. So you can bring them really close to the edge. And that means that artillery and drone operators can literally sit in perfect safety and provide direct support to Ukrainian Marines in Krinky. But that's not all. Take a look at the map itself. You can see here is some of the marshland, and then here is the actual town itself. So Ukrainian forces controlling a swath of this marshland here, but also this chunk of the town. And you might note that there's this very forested area kind of crisscrossed with these small goat trails. But what I suspect happened is at the outset of the Ukrainian Marines invasion, Russia deployed tons of mines here to prevent a breakthrough. Because you notice if Russian armor is going to have a hard time operating in this region. So I suspect that Russian mining all along this area, these fields, was very dense. And then I suspect Ukrainian forces, as they started to pivot to this attritional strategy, used their own artillery deployed scatterable mines into these areas here, meaning that in effect, there's only two ways to get to these Ukrainian forces in Krinky here, and that is to approach from the west or from the east down two straight, long, flat roads. And when you look at the video, the FPV video, you may also notice that because these are long, flat, straight roads, the Marines in Krinky don't even have to be the ones observing it. You could literally have observers. You could have observers with binoculars sitting on this side of the Dnipro, and they can probably see these Russian attacks coming from literally miles away. Or as long as you're able to fly these drones, which again, you can operate the drones right here. So you could have 24-hour coverage of drones covering these roadways, and you're going to see these Russian attacks coming at you literally, again, from miles and miles away. Once you can see them, it's very easy to spot them. Again, if you're an artillery operator, you know you have to pre-plan fires along specific points of a single road, basically. And when you have a mandate that's that simple, it becomes very straightforward to identify your targets, to say, hey, listen, there's 3 intersections. I will bet anything that if you asked Ukrainian artillery operators, they know the exact grid for this road cross section, this road cross section, this road cross section, this road cross section, and this road cross section. It's literally like if you were to map out little crosshairs, you could do it. Meaning that no Russian tank or APC is ever more than like 50 meters from pre-planned Ukrainian artillery fire that can operate from the safety of the Kherson side of the Dnipro. So what you have in effect is drones that continually can observe with incredible ease. You have terrain that is literally almost tailor-made for artillery fire missions. And then, of course, you have the fact that FPV drones can easily operate here. Launched from any one of these towns, they can zip over, strike Russian targets literally in maybe 10 minutes. So within 10 minutes of spotting one of these Russian vehicles, a drone can be attacking it. It makes maneuver so very difficult. And we see literally dozens of videos on X of just BMP after BMP driving down this exact road again and again, getting hit with FPV drones again and again. They never even reach the Ukrainian Marines. Now, don't get me wrong. The Ukrainian Marines are fighting. This is a fight. And those guys are going hard. And they are not trifling. But the attrition, the bulk of the Russian attrition appears to be happening on the approach to the objective, right? Very little Russian manpower and material makes it to the objective itself. And again, the closer they likely get to the actual parts of Ukrainian liberated Krinky, the greater the attrition rate, the higher the artillery support. And the fact is that because Russia can't conduct this amphibious operation on its side, it can't counter the Russian artillery, the Ukrainian artillery, in the same way that Ukrainian artillery, right? It can't sit next to these Marines. They're going to take it out. They've got to have standoff distance. So you see how that the Ukrainian Marines have effectively turned themselves into a juicy piece of bait that Putin just cannot resist taking, right? Which is kicking the Ukrainians out of the southern bank of the Dnipro. And in exchange for taking this bait day after day, Ukrainian forces are using their drones and artillery to absolutely punish them. That's all I had, guys. I hope you got something out of it. Be sure to check out combatvetnews.com for the combat footage that I can't show you here on YouTube of the Battle of Krinky. And I'll see you guys in the next one.